was on a 9-day foreign trip around the world, and a few days ago he started his trip with a visit to Saudi Arabia. So there he gave a speech praising Saudi Arabia and their leaders, and one of the more notable things that he said was he called Saudi Arabia a magnificent kingdom. And in this speech, one of the things he talked about was the recent $400 billion in deals that the two countries made with each other last week, and the deal involved planes, ships, oil, and gas, and it included a $110 billion weapons deal with Saudi Arabia. And so this is a trend that previous presidents have done as well, especially with Obama. And so this graph from Reuters shows military sales to Saudi Arabia over the past presidents. So the U.S. has been selling arms to Saudi Arabia for a long time, but it had a huge spike under Obama in 2012 when he sold $35.1 billion in that year alone. And now Trump is continuing this trend, selling Saudi Arabia even more weapons. But the problem with all of this, the problem with the U.S. being allies with Saudi Arabia and making these deals with them, is that Saudi Arabia is just a terrible country. So first, the 9/11 hijackers were from Saudi Arabia, and the country played a part in the attack. And Trump even criticized the country in the past, saying that Saudi Arabia was behind 9/11. And also Trump criticized Saudi Arabia for their ties to the Clinton Foundation. And so Trump on this issue, like most of his other views, have completely changed since coming into office. So next here are some of the other problems with Saudi Arabia. So their country is a theocracy and follows an extremist interpretation of Islam, and they view women as second-class citizens. Women are forced to cover up their faces, they can't leave and go anywhere without a guardian, and they're not allowed to drive. All atheists are viewed as terrorists. Homosexuality is immoral, and acts of homosexuality can be punished by whipping, fines, imprisonment, or even execution. And the media is not allowed to insult the royal family or conflict with Islamic teachings and values, and insulting the Saudi royalty family could itself be punishable by death. And so also they will execute and behead people for non-lethal crimes. And The Guardian reported that in 2015 the beheadings reached the highest level in 2 decades. The Guardian says Saudi Arabia carried out at least 157 executions in 2015, with beheadings reaching their highest level in the kingdom in 2 decades, according to several advocacy groups that monitor the death penalty worldwide. And coinciding with the rise in executions is the number of people executed for non-lethal offenses that judges have discretion to rule on, particularly for drug-related crimes. And Amnesty International said in November that at least 63 people had been executed since the start of the year for drug-related offenses, and this figure made up at least 40% of the total number of executions in 2015, compared to less than 4% for drug-related executions in 2010. And Amnesty said Saudi Arabia has exceeded its highest level of executions since 1995, when 192 executions were recorded. So Saudi Arabia is just a terrible country, as shown by all of this, but the U.S., despite all this, stays allies with them because we get a lot of cheap oil from them, and they make a lot of deals with us. Trump again on this issue completely changes his position on policy, and now is calling the country a magnificent kingdom. So Trump is just incredibly weak on Saudi Arabia, just like Obama and previous presidents, and the U.S. needs to stop being okay with the practices that this country does.